My name is Melissa Turner, and at 34, I never expected my 15-year career at FinTech Solutions to end with security escorting me out. As lead financial systems architect, I built the infrastructure our company runs on. That Friday meeting with our new CFO, Harold Pierce, changed everything when he said those words. Little did he know, I was the only one who could unlock our financial future. If you are enjoying this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe for more workplace revenge stories that will make your jaw drop. I still remember my first day at FinTech Solutions. Fresh out of college with my finance degree, I walked into a tiny office with just 20 employees. The company was a startup with big dreams, but limited resources. Walter Hayes, our founding CEO, interviewed me personally. He saw something in me beyond my limited experience and took a chance. "We need people who can grow with us," Walter told me during that first interview. "People who can help build something lasting." Those words stuck with me through the years. I started as an entry-level financial analyst handling basic reports and spreadsheets. In those early days, our financial systems were cobbled together from off-the-shelf software and manual processes. It was functional, but inefficient. 3 months into the job, I approached Walter with an idea. What if we built our own financial forecasting system? Something tailored specifically to our business model. I had been teaching myself programming on the side and believed we could create something better than what we were using. Walter took a chance on my proposal. He allocated a small budget and gave me 2 months to produce a prototype. I worked day and night learning as I went, determined to prove myself. When I finally presented the prototype, it was rough but promising. Walter saw the potential immediately. "This could be a game changer for us," he said. "Keep developing it." And that was the beginning of what would become Oracle, our proprietary financial forecasting system. Not to be confused with the big tech company, our Oracle stood for Operational Revenue Analysis and Calculation Logistical Engine. Over the years, it evolved from that simple prototype into a sophisticated system that handled everything from day-to-day accounting to complex quarterly forecasting and scenario planning. My dedication to the company went beyond normal working hours. I regularly stayed late working until midnight to implement new features or fix bugs. I canceled vacations when financial periods were closing. During our Series B funding round, I slept in the office for 3 straight days, making sure our financial projections were perfect for potential investors. The personal sacrifices were significant. I missed my sister Stephanie's 30th birthday party because we were in the middle of an important system upgrade. My social life dwindled as the company grew. Dating became nearly impossible with my unpredictable schedule. But I believed in what we were building, and Walter always made me feel valued. "Melissa is the backbone of our financial operations," he would tell new employees during orientation. "If you have questions about our systems, she is the Oracle behind Oracle." As the company grew from 20 to 200 to eventually over 1,000 employees, I rose through the ranks, from financial analyst to senior analyst, then financial systems manager, and finally, to lead financial systems architect. Each promotion came with new responsibilities and challenges, but I embraced them all. I created increasingly sophisticated financial tools, each one more powerful than the last. The quarterly forecasting module became my pride and joy. It could process thousands of variables from sales trends to market fluctuations, producing accurate revenue projections that impressed even the most skeptical board members. Security became a particular focus as the company grew. Financial data was our most sensitive asset, and I designed custom security protocols to protect it. Access to different modules was strictly controlled with authentication requirements that went beyond industry standards. I built the system so that critical functions required not just passwords but specific authentication sequences known only to authorized users. I trained every new finance team member personally, walking them through the systems I had designed. Many found it overwhelming at first, but I was patient, knowing how powerful these tools could be once mastered. The company culture in those early years was special. We felt like family. Birthdays were celebrated with genuine warmth. Achievements were recognized and rewarded. Walter created an environment of mutual respect and appreciation. Long-term employees were valued for their institutional knowledge and loyalty. We collaborated rather than competed. Ideas flowed freely between departments. The finance team worked closely with sales, marketing, and product development to ensure our growth was sustainable. I felt connected to everyone from the janitor to the executives. For 15 years, this was my world. I gave FinTech Solutions everything I had, and in return, I felt I was building something meaningful. The company grew from a scrappy startup to a respected industry leader. Our financial systems, which I had architected from the ground up, were a competitive advantage no one could replicate. I never imagined all of that would change with the arrival of one man. Harold Pierce arrived at FinTech Solutions with a reputation that preceded him. His LinkedIn profile boasted impressive credentials, Harvard MBA, successful stints at 3 Fortune 500 companies, and a reputation for aggressive cost-cutting measures that boosted short-term profits. The board brought him in as our new CFO, after our previous one, Franklin Douglas, retired after 12 years with the company. From the moment Harold walked through the door in his immaculately tailored suit and power tie, the atmosphere changed. His first company-wide email set the tone. Financial efficiency will be our North Star. Every expenditure must be justified. Every process will be evaluated. Change is coming. My first face-to-face meeting with Harold was brief and cold. He had scheduled 15-minute introductions with each department head. When my turn came, I brought a detailed presentation about our financial systems, eager to show him what we had built. I prefer to start from scratch rather than inherit someone else thinking, he said, cutting me off 2 slides in. Your systems may have worked for a smaller company, but we need enterprise-level solutions now. I tried to explain that our proprietary systems were already enterprise-level, handling complex operations for over 1,000 employees and billions in revenue. He glanced at his watch. Email me a summary, he said, standing to indicate our meeting was over. Keep it under 1 page. The changes began almost immediately. Harold brought in 4 people from his previous company, installing them in key positions. Judith Anderson became the new budget director, replacing Tina Evans, who had been with us for 9 years. Marcus Dawson took over as head of financial reporting, pushing aside Gregory Wilson, who had worked alongside me developing our reporting modules. The restructuring created a rigid new hierarchy. Suddenly, accessing financial data required approval from multiple levels of management. Meetings became formal affairs with strict agendas. The spontaneous collaboration that had driven our innovation disappeared. Within his first month, Harold eliminated 6 positions in the finance department, all held by veteran employees. Each termination was explained as streamlining operations or removing redundancies. The remaining team members became anxious, wondering who would be next. I tried my best to adapt to the new reality. I documented all my processes as requested. I attended the new mandatory 7 a.m. daily finance briefings. I rewrote reports to match Harold's preferred formats. I stayed even later than usual, making sure our systems continued to function smoothly despite the disruption. I also tried to build rapport with Harold, stopping by his office to provide updates on system performance and offer assistance with the transition. His responses were always the same brief acknowledgments followed by new demands. The board wants daily revenue snapshots now, he would say, without looking up from his computer. Make it happen by tomorrow. I would work through the night to deliver what he asked for, only to have him request changes as soon as I submitted it. Despite Harold's dismissive attitude toward me, other employees continued to seek my help. They found the new processes confusing and often came to me for guidance on navigating the systems I had built. Junior analysts would slip into my office with questions they were afraid to ask Harold or his team. Melissa, can you show me how to run this new report format? Laura Bailey, a financial analyst, whispered one afternoon. I asked Marcus twice, but he just tells me to figure it out on my own. I always helped when I could, staying after hours to train colleagues on system functions. This clearly annoyed Harold, who made comments during meetings about unofficial channels and undermining the new structure. The tension grew when Harold announced his plan to transition from our proprietary Oracle system to an off-the-shelf solution from a major vendor. He presented this to the executive team without consulting me or anyone else who understood our current systems. We will save millions in maintenance costs, he claimed in the presentation, and eliminate our dependency on internal resources. Walter looked concerned during that meeting, but the board representatives present seemed impressed by the projected cost savings. Only Vincent Taylor, our COO, who had been with the company almost as long as I had raised objections. Our current system is tailored to our specific needs, Vincent argued. A generic solution would be a step backward. Harold dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. Modern enterprise systems are fully customizable, and they come with dedicated support teams rather than relying on individuals who could leave at any time. I felt the target on my back growing larger with each passing day. Whispers about more terminations circulated through the office. 3 more long-term employees from other departments were let go the following week. The message was clear: no one was safe regardless of their tenure or contributions. I started backing up my personal belongings, sensing what was coming. I organized my documentation meticulously. I even began transferring knowledge to a few trusted team members just in case, all while continuing to maintain the systems that the entire company relied on. The quarterly board meeting was approaching fast. This particular meeting was crucial, as we would be presenting our annual forecast and budget for approval. Harold insisted on overhauling the entire presentation format, demanding countless revisions to reports that had served us well for years. 2 days before the board meeting, I received a calendar invitation from Harold for a 9 a.m. meeting on Friday. The subject line simply read, "Discussion. No agenda. No other attendees listed." My stomach dropped when I saw it. 15 years of instinct told me what was coming. I spent Thursday night ensuring all systems were running perfectly, updating the quarterly forecasts one final time, and clearing personal files from my computer. I came to work early on Friday dressed in my most professional outfit, mentally preparing myself for what was to come. Little did I know how coldly it would happen, or how quickly things would unravel for Harold afterward. Friday morning arrived with an eerie calm. The office felt different somehow, as if the building itself knew something was about to happen. I had been the first to arrive as usual, coming in at 6:30 a.m. to check all systems before the day started. The quarterly forecasting reports were complete and ready for the board meeting on Monday. Everything was in perfect order. At 8:55 a.m., I gathered my notebook and a copy of the latest system documentation and headed to Harold's office for our 9 a.m. meeting. His assistant Natalie Parker avoided eye contact as I approached another bad sign to add to the growing list. "You can go in," she said quietly. "They are expecting you." They? So it was not just Harold. The knot in my stomach tightened. I entered Harold's office to find him seated behind his massive desk with Diane Winters from Human Resources standing beside him. Neither smiled as I entered. A chair had been placed directly in front of the desk, making me feel like I was being called to the principal's office. "Melissa, please sit down," Harold said, his voice as cold as I had ever heard it. I sat, maintaining my composure despite knowing exactly what was coming. "As you know, we have been restructuring the finance department to better align with our strategic goals." Harold began reciting what sounded like a prepared statement. "We have made the decision to eliminate your position as part of this restructuring effort." I nodded, saying nothing, waiting for him to continue. "Your 15 years here are over," he said, emphasizing each word, as if to make sure I understood the finality of it. "Today will be your last day. Diane has your separation agreement and information about your severance package." Diane slid a folder across the desk toward me. I did not touch it. "May I ask the specific reason for my termination?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the anger and hurt building inside me. Harold shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with direct questions that deviated from his script. "As I said, we are restructuring the department. We are implementing new systems that will streamline our operations. Your role has become redundant." "I see," I replied. "And who will be handling the transition of the financial systems I developed?" "The quarterly board meeting is on Monday, and the forecasting model requires specific authentication protocols to access." Harold waved dismissively. "We have a transition plan in place. The new systems are much simpler and do not require specialized knowledge to operate." I almost laughed at his ignorance, but maintained my professional demeanor. I had spent 15 years building complex, secure financial systems. They were anything but simple to navigate without proper training. "Who will present the quarterly forecast on Monday?" I asked. "I will handle the presentation," Harold replied with irritation creeping into his voice. This conversation is not productive, Melissa. Diane will walk you through the separation process now. I stood up slowly, gathering my notebook and the documentation I had brought. I looked Harold directly in the eyes. I wish you luck with the quarterly reports, I said calmly. I hope everything goes smoothly for you. Something in my tone must have registered with him because I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his face. But it was too late for second thoughts. The decision had been made. Diane escorted me to my desk where 2 security guards already waited. This final humiliation was unnecessary. I had never been anything but loyal to the company. Being treated like a potential threat stung more than the termination itself. You have 30 minutes to gather your personal belongings, Diane informed me. I will need your keycard and company phone before you leave. Colleagues watched in shocked silence as I packed my desk. 15 years of my life fit into a single cardboard box. Family photos, awards for service, a coffee mug given to me by Walter on my 10th anniversary with the company. Small tokens of a career that had defined my adult life. Laura Bailey approached despite Diane's obvious disapproval. I cannot believe this is happening, she whispered. What are we supposed to do without you? You will figure it out, I told her with a sad smile. Just remember the training we did last month. As I packed, my computer automatically logged out, displaying the standard message when a session ends. Your session has been terminated. Please contact System Administrator for access. The irony was not lost on me. I was the System Administrator. Had been for 15 years. With my box of belongings in hand, I surrendered my keycard to Diane and was escorted to the elevator by the security guards. As the doors closed, I caught a final glimpse of the office that had been my second home. Faces of shocked colleagues. The System Development Awards on the wall, several with my name on them. The company mission statement I had helped craft. Building financial technology that empowers businesses to thrive. As I walked through the lobby toward the exit, Walter stepped out of a conference room and saw me with my box and security escort. His face registered shock and then understanding. He started to approach but stopped when one of the board members called his name from the conference room. Our eyes met briefly. His seemed to say, I am sorry. Mine probably said, you will be. I walked out the front door into the bright spring morning, 15 years finished in a 30-minute exit. But this story was far from over. The drive home passed in a blur. Traffic lights, other cars, pedestrians all seemed unreal compared to the chaos in my mind. I parked in my driveway and sat there for several minutes trying to process what had just happened. 15 years, gone in an instant. I finally gathered enough energy to carry my box of belongings inside. My apartment felt foreign, as if I was seeing it for the first time. I rarely spent waking hours here. It had been a place to sleep between workdays, not a home. I placed the box on my kitchen counter and methodically unpacked each item. The service awards. The team photos from company retreats. The handwritten note from Walter when I completed the first version of Oracle. You have built something extraordinary. Thank you for your vision. The shock began to give way to anger. Not the hot, explosive kind, but a cold, calculating anger that cleared my mind and allowed me to think strategically. I had given everything to FinTech Solutions. Nights, weekends, holidays. I had sacrificed relationships and personal milestones for the company. And this was how it ended. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down at my rarely used home desk. I needed to assess my situation rationally. First, finances. I opened my personal laptop and checked my bank accounts. Years of good salary and minimal spending time had left me in a decent position. I could survive for at least a year without income if necessary. My 401 Kelvin was well funded. The severance package, which I had not even looked at yet, would provide additional cushion. Next, career options. I updated my LinkedIn profile and resumed marking myself as open to opportunities. Within an hour, I had messages from 3 recruiters and 2 former colleagues who had moved to other companies. My skills were in demand. I was not without options. By evening, my phone was buzzing constantly with text messages and calls from colleagues who had heard the news. I let most go to voicemail, not ready to rehash the story repeatedly. I did take a call from Vincent Taylor, our COO. "This is madness, Melissa," he said, his voice low as if he was calling from somewhere private. Harold pushed this through while Walter was tied up with the board members who flew in early. No one consulted me or any of the other executives. "It is done now," I replied, surprised by how calm I sounded. "I will be fine, Vincent." "What about the quarterly presentation? Harold has no idea how to access those forecasting models. He keeps talking about the transition to the new system, but that is months away if it happens at all." "That sounds like Harold's problem now," I said. Vincent was silent for a moment. "Melissa, I have known you for 14 years. You built those systems from nothing. You know every line of code, every security protocol. No one else can navigate them fully, especially the quarterly forecasting module." "Yes," I acknowledged. "That is accurate. The board meeting is Monday morning. The entire executive team's annual performance review depends on those numbers." Again, that sounds like Harold's problem. Vincent sighed. "I understand your position. I would feel the same way. Just keep your phone on this weekend." "Okay." After we hung up, I considered what Vincent had said. The quarterly forecasting module was indeed my most complex creation. It pulled data from every department, applied proprietary algorithms to identify trends and anomalies, and generated projections that had guided company strategy for years. The security protocols were particularly robust, requiring specific authentication sequences that only I fully understood. I had documented the basics, of course. Any good system architect would. But some elements were known only to me, built that way, intentionally to protect our most sensitive financial data. The authentication system required not just passwords but specific patterns of access that acted as an additional security layer. When I originally designed it, Walter had asked if this was necessary. "What if you get hit by a bus?" he had asked. "There are emergency protocols," I had assured him. "But for day-to-day operations, this level of security protects us from both external threats and internal misuse." He had trusted my judgment. Now that trust would be tested in ways neither of us had anticipated. Saturday morning, I woke to 5 email notifications from the system. Automated alerts informing me of failed access attempts to the quarterly forecasting module. Someone was trying to run the reports without proper authentication. Each failed attempt triggered a security protocol that further restricted access. After 5 failures, the system would lock down completely, requiring a full reset. By noon, my phone began ringing with calls from numbers I recognized as FinTech Solutions extensions. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages became increasingly desperate. "Melissa, this is Kyle from IT. We are having some issues with the Oracle system. Can you please call me back as soon as possible? Melissa, Laura Bailey here. There is a situation with the quarterly reports. Please call me. It is urgent." By Sunday morning, the tone had changed completely. "Melissa, this is Harold Pierce. We require your immediate assistance with accessing the financial systems. Please contact me at your earliest convenience." I almost laughed at that one. My earliest convenience might be never. I spent Sunday updating my resume, reaching out to my professional network, and even applying for a few positions that looked promising. I also took a long walk in the park, something I rarely had time for when working. The spring air felt different somehow. Fresher. Full of possibilities rather than deadlines. Sunday evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Walter Hayes standing there looking haggard and stressed. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside to let him enter. This was the first time in 15 years that my CEO had visited my home. "I owe you an apology," he said once we were seated in my living room. "I should have fought harder against your termination." Harold convinced the board it was necessary for his new direction, and I was outvoted. "Business is business," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Walter ran a hand through his gray hair. "The thing is, Melissa, we have a situation. The board meeting is tomorrow morning. The quarterly forecast is inaccessible. Harold has been trying since Friday afternoon to access the system, but all he gets is an access denied message." "The system has security protocols," I said. "Failed access attempts trigger additional security measures." "So I am learning," Walter replied with a grim smile. "We have brought in external consultants, but they say it would take weeks to bypass the security without the proper authentication sequences. We do not have weeks. We have hours. I said nothing, waiting. The board members are already in town. Major investors will be calling in. This presentation determines our strategic direction for the coming year. Walter leaned forward. Melissa, I am asking for your help not as CEO to employee but as someone who built this company together with you. Will you help us access the system? I considered my options carefully. Refusing outright would be satisfying but potentially burn bridges I might need later. Helping without conditions would validate Harold's decision to terminate me. I will need to think about it, I told Walter. I will let you know my decision in the morning. After Walter left, I sat in silence, contemplating my next move. The smart play was obvious, but I needed to be careful about how I proceeded. I was startled from my thoughts by my phone ringing again. The caller ID showed Vincent Taylor. Melissa, he said. When I answered, things have escalated. Harold is threatening to sue you for sabotage. That would be ill-advised, I replied calmly. I did nothing to the system. The security protocols have been in place for years, documented and approved by the executive team, including Harold when he first joined. I know that, but he is panicking. The board is asking questions he cannot answer. Again, not my problem anymore. Vincent lowered his voice. Just so you know, Walter is planning to call you himself in the morning. The situation has become critical. After hanging up, I smiled for the first time since Friday. Harold had made a critical error in judgment. He had assumed the systems could function without me, that I was just another expendable employee. He was about to learn otherwise. I slept better that night than I had in years, knowing that tomorrow would bring a reckoning. Not through any action on my part, but through the simple reality that systems built with care and complexity cannot be discarded so easily, and neither could the people who created them. My phone rang at 6 a.m. Monday morning. The caller ID showed Walter's mobile number. Melissa, he said, his voice tense. The board is waiting, and all our forecast model says is Melissa Turner, and excess de need. Explain. I smiled into the phone. I would be happy to explain, Walter. In person. Shall we say 8 a.m. at the office? Sunday night had brought me the first peaceful sleep I had enjoyed in years. No late-night system alerts waking me up. No anxiety about early morning meetings. Just quiet rest, and the knowledge that Monday would bring a reckoning that I had not orchestrated but would certainly witness. I woke before my alarm feeling strangely energized. For the first time in 15 years, I could take my time getting ready in the morning. I made a proper breakfast. I read the news. I enjoyed a second cup of coffee, simple pleasures that had been sacrificed to my demanding career. At 7:30 a.m., I dressed in my most professional outfit, a navy blue suit that I reserved for board presentations. I applied my makeup carefully, styled my hair, and even added a pair of earrings that had been a gift from my sister Stephanie years ago. Today was about reclaiming my power, and I wanted to look and feel the part. The drive to FinTech Solutions felt surreal. For 15 years, this commute had been a race against the clock, my mind, already working through the day's challenges before I arrived. Today I drove at a leisurely pace, noting details of the route I had never had time to observe before. I pulled into the parking garage at 7:55 a.m. My reserved parking spot had already been reassigned, a petty move that now seemed laughable given the circumstances. I found visitor parking and made my way to the lobby. The security guard at the front desk, Anthony, did a double take when he saw me. Miss Turner, I thought. They told us you no longer work here. I have a meeting with Walter Hayes, I replied with a smile. He is expecting me. Anthony looked uncertain but made a quick call. After a brief conversation, he printed a visitor badge and handed it to me. Mr. Hayes says to send you up right away. They are in the main boardroom. The elevator ride to the executive floor gave me a moment to center myself. I was not here for revenge. I was here to demonstrate my value and negotiate from a position of strength. Professionalism would be my weapon of choice. When the elevator doors opened, I was greeted by Vincent Taylor, who looked like he had not slept all weekend. Thank God you are here, he said, leading me down the hallway. It has been chaos. Harold brought in 3 different consultants yesterday. None of them could make any progress with the system. The board members are getting restless. How is Harold handling it? I asked, keeping my tone conversational. Vincent gave a short, humorless laugh. Not well. He spent most of yesterday blaming IT then. The consultants then finally admitted this morning that he may have made a hasty decision regarding your position. We reached the boardroom doors. Through the glass panels I could see a tense scene inside. Walter stood at the head of the table addressing the board members. Harold sat to his right looking pale and disheveled. Several other executives lined the walls, including Laura Bailey, who had clearly been brought in to try to help with the system. Vincent opened the door and all heads turned toward us. The conversation stopped abruptly. Melissa Walters said, relief evident in his voice. Thank you for coming. I nodded professionally as I entered. Good morning, everyone. Harold could not quite meet my eyes. He shuffled papers in front of him, pretending to review documents. As you all know, we are experiencing some technical difficulties with our quarterly forecasting system, Walter explained to the board members. Melissa Turner, our former lead financial systems architect, has graciously agreed to assist us this morning. I noticed his careful use of former, a reminder that I was no longer an employee but a potential savior. The power dynamic had shifted dramatically in 72 hours. The board chairwoman, Elizabeth Nelson, a stern woman in her 60s, who had never shown much interest in the technical details of our operation, fixed me with a penetrating stare. Miss Turner, we were informed on Friday that your position had been eliminated as part of a strategic restructuring. Now we are told that without you, we cannot access critical financial data. Can you explain this discrepancy? I maintained my professional composure. Miss Nelson, the Oracle system that I designed over the past 15 years, has multiple security layers to protect our sensitive financial data. These security protocols have been documented and approved by the executive team annually. They require specific authentication sequences known only to authorized users. When improper access is attempted, additional security measures activate automatically. And you are the only authorized user for the quarterly forecasting module, she asked incredulously. No, ma'am. There are emergency protocols and documentation. However, the quarterly module is particularly sensitive as it contains projections that could impact our stock price if accessed improperly. The full authentication process is complex by design. Harold finally spoke up. This is exactly the problem I identified. We cannot have critical systems that depend on a single employee. I turned to him calmly. The system does not depend on a single employee, Mr. Pierce. It depends on proper knowledge transfer and transition planning, neither of which occurred before my termination on Friday. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Several board members exchanged glances. Walter stepped in smoothly. The relevant question now is how quickly we can access the quarterly forecasts. The board needs to review them today, and our investors are expecting a call at 11 a.m. I can restore access immediately, I said, but I would like to discuss terms first. Harold started to protest, but Elizabeth Nelson raised a hand to silence him. What terms did you have in mind, Miss Turner? She asked. I laid out my proposal succinctly. I will provide immediate access to the system and personally present the quarterly forecast to the board. Following that, I will offer my services as an independent consultant for 3 months to train appropriate staff on all system functions and assist with any transition plans. My consulting rate is 3 times my former salary with a minimum guarantee of 20 hours per week. Harold's face reddened. This is extortion. This is business, Mr. Pierce, I replied evenly. You determined on Friday that my services were no longer valuable to the company. I am simply establishing the current market value of those services based on demand. Elizabeth Nelson studied me for a moment, then turned to Walter. How critical is this quarterly forecast to today's board meeting? It is the foundation for all our strategic planning discussions, Walter replied. Without it, we have nothing substantive to present to the board or our investors. She nodded once. Miss Turner's terms seem reasonable given the circumstances. Draft a consulting agreement immediately. Harold looked like he might explode, but he remained silent. Outvoted once again, but this time in a much more public and humiliating way. While the legal team drafted the agreement, I sat at the boardroom computer and began the process of restoring system access. I could feel Harold watching me trying to memorize my keystrokes, but the authentication sequence involved more than just passwords. It required specific patterns of access across multiple modules in a particular order. something that could not be discerned merely by observation. Within 20 minutes, the quarterly forecasting module was fully accessible. The projections that had been locked behind access denied messages now displayed on the large screen at the end of the boardroom. The board members visibly relaxed as familiar charts and graphs appeared. "The system is operating normally now," I announced. "Would you like me to proceed with the quarterly presentation?" Walter nodded gratefully. "Please do." For the next hour, I presented the quarterly forecast as I had done many times before. The difference was that, this time, I was not an employee, but a highly paid consultant commanding the respect of everyone in the room, including those who had dismissed me just days earlier. When I finished, Elizabeth Nelson asked, "Are there any questions for Miss Turner?" There were several technical questions which I answered clearly and concisely. Harold remained silent throughout, his humiliation complete. After the meeting, Vincent escorted me to what would be my temporary office as a consultant. It was ironically larger and nicer than the one I had occupied as an employee. "That was masterfully handled," he said as we walked. "You could have refused to help, but you chose the more professional path." "Revenge would have been emotionally satisfying, but professionally unwise," I replied. "This outcome benefits everyone, including me." "Especially you," Vincent said with a small smile. "Harold looks like he swallowed a lemon." "Harold made a critical error," I said. "He assumed systems and people are interchangeable parts. Some are. Some very much are not." As I settled into my new office, Laura Bailey knocked on the door. "I cannot believe you are back," she said, her relief evident. "The past 3 days have been a nightmare. Nothing worked properly and no one knew what to do." "I am not back as an employee," I clarified. "I am here as a consultant to ensure a proper transition. Still, it is good to see you here instead of being escorted out by security." Throughout the day, various team members stopped by, each expressing similar sentiments. It became clear that my abrupt termination had created a ripple of fear and uncertainty throughout the organization. My return, even in this new capacity, seemed to restore a sense of stability. By late afternoon, the consulting agreement was finalized and signed. The terms were exactly as I had requested, with additional provisions for potential extension if the transition required more time. I would be making more in 3 months than I had in the previous year, as an employee with complete control over my hours and responsibilities. As I prepared to leave for the day, Walter appeared in my doorway. "Do you have a moment?" he asked. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, our roles now reversed from the countless times I had sat across from him as an employee. "I want to apologize again," he said once seated. "I should have protected you from Harold's restructuring plans. You built this company alongside me, and I failed to acknowledge that when it mattered." "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "But business decisions are rarely personal. Harold did what he thought was best for the company. He was wrong, but his intention was not malicious, just misinformed." Walter looked at me with newfound respect. "You are handling this with remarkable grace." "Not grace," I corrected him. "Strategy. Being bitter would not serve my interests. Demonstrating my value while maintaining my professionalism does." As Walter left, I reflected on the dramatic reversal of fortune that had occurred in just 3 days. I had gone from terminated employee to essential consultant, from escorted out by security to welcomed back with relief. All without taking any action beyond simply allowing the consequences of Harold's decision to unfold naturally. The systems I had built were my legacy, but they were also my leverage. I had not designed them to be dependent on me out of ego or job security fears. I had designed them to be robust, secure, and complex, because that was what the company needed. That their complexity now worked in my favor was simply an unexpected benefit. As I drove home that evening, I felt a sense of vindication, but also a strange gratitude. Harold's decision to terminate me had unwittingly opened a door to a new phase of my career, one where I would have more control, better compensation, and a healthier balance between work and personal life. Sometimes being pushed out is exactly what you need to find your way forward. The 3-month consulting arrangement began immediately. I established a clear schedule, working from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 3 days a week. This was a dramatic change from my previous 70-hour weeks, and yet I accomplished more in those limited hours than I had before. Freedom from corporate politics and endless meetings allowed me to focus purely on the technical aspects of my role. My first priority was documenting the entire Oracle system properly. While basic documentation existed, I now created comprehensive guides that explained not just how to use the system, but why it was designed certain ways. I recorded video tutorials demonstrating the authentication sequences and security protocols. I created troubleshooting flowcharts for common issues. Harold avoided me entirely for the first 2 weeks. When we did eventually cross paths in meetings, he was coldly professional, never acknowledging the dramatic reversal of our positions. I maintained a strictly business attitude, focusing on the work rather than any personal feelings about what had transpired. Vincent Taylor became my primary contact within the executive team. We met weekly to review the transition progress. "The board is impressed with your documentation," he told me during our 3rd week. Elizabeth Nelson specifically mentioned the clarity of your training materials. "I have had time to think about how to explain these systems properly," I replied. As an employee, I was always rushing from one crisis to another. This consulting arrangement allows me to focus on transfer of knowledge rather than just putting out fires. By the end of the first month, I had trained 4 staff members on the core functions of Oracle. Laura Bailey showed particular aptitude and quickly became my unofficial apprentice. She absorbed the complex logic behind the system and asked insightful questions that sometimes even challenged my thinking. "You should consider a career in systems architecture," I told her, after a particularly productive training session. "You have the right mindset for it." "I never thought about that path before," she admitted, "but working with you has opened my eyes to the possibilities." As the 2nd month of consulting began, an unexpected development occurred. Walter called me into his office for what I assumed would be a routine progress meeting. Instead, I found him sitting with 2 board members, including Elizabeth Nelson. "Melissa, thank you for coming," Walter began. "We have been reviewing the transition process and the board has some questions." Elizabeth cut to the chase. "Ms. Turner, your documentation and training have been exemplary. The question before us now is whether to proceed with Mr. Pierce's plan to replace Oracle with an off-the-shelf solution." I maintained a neutral expression, though this was the first I had heard that Harold's plan was still under consideration. "The board would value your professional assessment," she continued. "Is Oracle worth maintaining and developing further? Or should we transition to a commercial alternative as Mr. Pierce has proposed?" This was a delicate question. My instinct was to defend the system I had built, but I needed to provide an objective assessment that served the company's best interests, not my ego. Oracle was designed specifically for FinTech Solutions' unique business model, I began carefully. Its customization is both its greatest strength and its greatest challenge. The system has evolved alongside the company for 15 years, incorporating institutional knowledge and proprietary algorithms that give us competitive advantages in forecasting accuracy. I paused, organizing my thoughts. That said, commercial systems offer certain benefits: dedicated support teams, regular updates, and broader compatibility with other business software. The question is whether those benefits outweigh the loss of customization and competitive advantage. Elizabeth nodded, seemingly appreciating my balanced response. "If I were making this decision," I continued, "I would conduct a thorough cost-benefit analysis. Not just the licensing costs versus internal development costs, but the strategic value of proprietary systems versus standardized ones. I would also consider a hybrid approach, maintaining Oracle for our core forecasting while integrating commercial solutions for standard accounting functions." Walter looked impressed. "That is exactly what I have been suggesting. A hybrid approach preserves our competitive advantages while addressing the single point of failure concern." The meeting continued for another hour with detailed discussions about specific modules and functions. By the end, it was clear that the board was reconsidering Harold's plan for complete replacement of our systems. As I was leaving, Elizabeth asked me to stay behind for a moment. "Miss Turner, would you be interested in extending your consulting agreement beyond the initial 3 months? Perhaps in a more strategic capacity, advising on the system's roadmap rather than just the transition." "I would be open to discussing that," I replied, surprised but pleased by the offer. The following week, I was invited to a strategy meeting that included the entire executive team, including Harold. The agenda focused on the future of our financial systems, with particular emphasis on the hybrid approach I had suggested. Harold began the meeting by presenting his original plan for complete replacement of Oracle. His presentation emphasized standardization, vendor support, and elimination of dependency on internal resources. The slides were polished, the arguments sound from a certain perspective. When he finished, Walter turned to me. "Melissa, would you present the alternative approach we discussed?" I had prepared extensively for this possibility. My presentation outlined the hybrid model in detail, identifying which components of Oracle provided unique competitive advantages and which could be reasonably replaced by commercial alternatives. I included a 5-year cost projection that accounted for licensing, development, and maintenance costs for both approaches. The difference in our presentations was stark. Harold spoke in broad generalizations about efficiency and standardization. I provided specific technical details, cost comparisons, and strategic implications. When questions came from the executive team, Harold struggled with the technical details while I could address each query with precise information. By the end of the meeting, the momentum had clearly shifted. Vincent proposed forming a systems strategy committee to develop a formal recommendation for the board with both Harold and me as members. Harold looked like he would rather be anywhere else, but he agreed with strained professionalism. Over the next 2 weeks, the committee met regularly to develop our recommendation. Working alongside Harold in this capacity was challenging but enlightening. Despite our history, I maintained strict professionalism, focusing on the technical merits of each approach rather than personal grievances. During one particularly tense discussion about security protocols, Harold finally addressed our situation directly. "You must be enjoying this," he said, when the others had left the room. "Watching me have to defer to you after I terminated your employment." "This is not about personal satisfaction," I replied calmly. "This is about developing the best strategy for a company I helped build over 15 years. My goal is to ensure FinTech Solutions continues to have the tools it needs to succeed, whether I am an employee, a consultant, or neither." He studied me for a moment, perhaps, trying to detect insincerity in my response. "I still believe dependency on proprietary systems is a strategic vulnerability," he said finally. "But I may have underestimated the value of institutional knowledge in managing that vulnerability." It was as close to an admission of error as I was likely to get from him. "Institutional knowledge can be documented and transferred," I acknowledged. "But it requires time and proper planning." That was the missing element in the transition attempt. By the end of the 3rd month of my consulting agreement, the Systems Strategy Committee presented its final recommendation to the board. We proposed maintaining Oracle's core forecasting engine while gradually integrating commercial solutions for standard accounting functions. The recommendation included a 2-year roadmap for development and a detailed training program to ensure multiple staff members could manage all aspects of the system. The board approved the recommendation unanimously. Following the approval, Elizabeth Nelson approached me again about extending my consulting role. "We would like you to oversee the implementation of this roadmap," she said. "Not as an employee, but as our lead strategic consultant for financial systems. The arrangement would be for 2 years with terms similar to your current agreement." The offer was compelling. The compensation would be excellent, the hours reasonable, and the work interesting. Most importantly, I would maintain my independence while continuing to guide the development of systems I had created. "I would be happy to continue in that capacity," I agreed. "With one condition. I would like Laura Bailey to be promoted to Systems Integration Manager, reporting directly to the CTO rather than to Harold. She has demonstrated exceptional aptitude during the transition and would be an ideal internal lead for this project." Elizabeth considered this for a moment, then nodded. "I see no issue with that arrangement. I will discuss it with Walter and the CTO." As we finalized the details of my extended consulting agreement, I reflected on how dramatically my professional situation had changed in just 3 months. I had gone from terminated employee to strategic advisor, from team member to independent expert. My income had increased substantially. My work-life balance had improved immeasurably, and my professional leverage had never been stronger. Harold remained CFO, but his influence had been checked. The board now understood the value of the systems I had built and the knowledge I possessed. More importantly, they recognized that value could not be discarded without consequences, regardless of who held what title. In our final transition meeting, Walter asked me a question that had clearly been on his mind for some time. "Looking back now, are you angry about what happened?" I considered this carefully before responding. Initially, yes. 15 years of dedication deserved better than an abrupt termination and security escort. But in retrospect, this forced change has been positive for me, professionally and personally. I would never have voluntarily left my position to become a consultant. Now that I have experienced this way of working, I would not go back. Walter nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes the worst moments in our careers become turning points that lead to better outcomes than we could have imagined. Exactly, I agreed. Harold did me a favor, though neither of us realized it at the time. As I left the office that day, I felt a sense of closure combined with new beginning. The termination that had seemed so devastating 3 months ago had ultimately led to liberation. I was still connected to the company and systems I had built, but now on my terms with boundaries that protected my time, energy, and well-being. Sometimes being pushed out is exactly what you need to find your way forward. 1 year after my abrupt termination, my life had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. The 3-month consulting arrangement had expanded into a thriving independent career. Beyond my ongoing strategic role with FinTech Solutions, I had taken on consulting projects with 3 other financial technology companies, each offering new challenges and perspectives. My income had more than doubled compared to my former salary, yet I worked fewer hours and maintained control over my schedule. For the first time in my adult life, I had both financial security and personal freedom. The quarterly board meeting at FinTech Solutions now felt routine rather than anxiety-inducing. I presented my sections as an outside expert rather than an employee desperate to prove my worth. The dynamic was healthier for everyone involved, especially me. After my presentation concluded, Elizabeth Nelson approached me during the break. "The implementation of the hybrid system has exceeded our expectations," she said. "The forecasting accuracy has improved by 12%. While overall system maintenance costs have decreased. The board is extremely pleased with the results." "Laura Bailey deserves much of the credit," I replied. "Her leadership of the internal team has been exceptional." Elizabeth nodded in agreement. Her promotion to Systems Integration Manager was clearly the right decision. She mentions your mentorship as a key factor in her success. As we spoke, I noticed Harold Pierce entering the boardroom. Our relationship had evolved into one of grudging professional respect. He still believed in standardization and vendor solutions as a general principle, but he had come to acknowledge the value of the hybrid approach for our specific business needs. "Melissa," he said with a nod as he passed us. "Harold," I responded similarly. Elizabeth watched this brief interaction with interest. "That was quite civil considering your history." I smiled. Professional relationships are rarely improved by holding grudges. We have different perspectives, but ultimately we both want what is best for the company. A mature outlook, she observed. Not everyone would be so pragmatic after being escorted out by security. The board meeting concluded with approval of the next phase of system development. As I gathered my materials, Walter approached. "Do you have time for coffee?" he asked. "There is something I would like to discuss." We walked to the small cafe in the building lobby, a place I had rushed through countless times as an employee, but rarely stopped to enjoy. Now I appreciated the aroma of freshly ground beans and the comfortable seating area. "I have been reflecting on what happened last year," Walter began once we were seated. "The company made a serious error in how we handled your termination. Not just the decision itself, but the manner in which it was executed." "Water under the bridge," I assured him. "Perhaps, but there are lessons to be learned." He took a sip of his coffee. "We failed to recognize the true value you brought to the organization. We saw your technical skills, but missed the institutional knowledge, the relationships you had built, the subtle ways your influence maintained system integrity." I nodded, appreciating his insight. "Since your transition to consultant, we have implemented new protocols for any staff changes involving key technical positions. Proper knowledge transfer is now mandatory with appropriate transition periods and documentation requirements." "That sounds like a positive development," I said. "It is, and it came directly from your experience." Walter leaned forward. "The reason I wanted to speak with you today is that Financial Technology Monthly has approached me for an interview about our innovative hybrid system approach. I suggested they should be speaking with you instead as the primary architect." I was surprised by this. Financial Technology Monthly was the leading publication in our industry. Being featured would significantly raise my professional profile. They want to do a feature article on system architecture and knowledge management. Walter continued. Your journey from employee to strategic consultant would make a compelling narrative if you are willing to share it. 2 weeks later, I found myself being interviewed by Sofia Martinez, a respected technology journalist. We sat in my home office, which had evolved from a rarely used desk in the corner to a well-appointed workspace with dual monitors, ergonomic furniture, and a view of my newly landscaped garden. Your story challenges conventional wisdom about career advancement, Sophia observed as we concluded the interview. Most professionals aim for higher positions within corporate structures. You found greater success by stepping outside that structure entirely. It was not a path I chose initially, I admitted, but being forced out of my comfort zone revealed possibilities I had never considered. The article was published the following month with the title, System Architect to Strategic Consultant: How Institutional Knowledge Becomes Market Value. The piece detailed my experience with FinTech Solutions and explored the broader implications for knowledge workers in technology fields. The response was overwhelming. My professional inbox filled with messages from other technology professionals sharing similar experiences. Several were in the midst of transitions from corporate roles to consulting and sought advice. I found myself informally mentoring a growing network of professionals navigating similar career pivots. 3 technology conferences invited me to speak about knowledge management and career transitions. Standing on stage sharing my experience was terrifying at first, but I discovered a talent for translating complex technical concepts into accessible insights for diverse audiences. My sister Stephanie, whose birthday party I had missed years earlier due to work commitments, attended my second speaking engagement. I hardly recognize you, she said afterward. Not just the public speaking, which I never thought you would do, but the whole way you carry yourself now. You seem so much more present. She was right. For 15 years, I had been partially absent. Even when physically present, my mind always occupied with work problems and system issues. Now, even while building a successful consulting practice, I was more fully engaged with my life outside of work. I had started taking pottery classes on Wednesday evenings, something I had wanted to try for years but never found the time for. I joined a hiking group that explored local trails on weekend mornings. I reconnected with college friends I had lost touch with during my workaholic years. Perhaps most significantly, I began dating again after a long hiatus. Brian Sullivan was an architectural engineer I met through the hiking group. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, neither of us willing to sacrifice our independence but both enjoying the companionship and shared interests. I think getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to you, Brian commented one evening as we prepared dinner together, something I rarely had time or energy for in my previous life. Not fired, I corrected with a smile. My position was eliminated as part of a strategic restructuring. We both laughed at the corporate euphemism. Whatever they called it, look at everything that has come from it. He gestured around my beautiful home, which I had finally had time to make truly mine. A thriving consulting practice, professional recognition, actual hobbies, and of course meeting me. When you put it that way, I should probably send Harold a thank you note, I joked. But there was truth beneath the humor. Being pushed out of my comfortable but consuming corporate role had ultimately led to a more balanced, fulfilling life. The termination that felt so devastating in the moment had become a catalyst for positive change. 1 year to the day after my termination, I received an unexpected email from Harold Pierce. I recently read your article in Financial Technology Monthly, he wrote. Your insights about knowledge transfer and system architecture were valuable. While we had our differences, I have come to respect your technical expertise and professional approach during a challenging transition. The hybrid system approach you championed has proven effective for our specific needs. It was as close to an apology as Harold would ever offer, and I accepted it as such. My response was brief but sincere. Thank you for your note. Different perspectives challenge us to articulate and refine our thinking. The hybrid approach is stronger for having been thoroughly examined from all angles. I wish you and the company continued success. As I reflect on my journey from dedicated employee to independent consultant, I am struck by how often our greatest growth comes from unexpected disruptions. The career I had clung to so tightly, canceling vacations and missing family events to protect had actually been limiting my potential in ways I could not see from the inside. The systems I built were valuable, but the skills, knowledge, and perspective I developed while building them were ultimately more valuable when I applied them more broadly. My termination did not diminish that value. It revealed it more clearly by forcing me to articulate it explicitly rather than demonstrate it implicitly. For anyone facing similar career disruptions, I would offer this hard-won wisdom: document your contributions meticulously, but do not define your worth by your position. True professional value transcends job titles and organizational charts. Sometimes the skills you develop in one context become even more valuable when applied in new ways. Most importantly, maintain your professionalism even when others do not. The way you respond to challenging situations reveals your character and ultimately shapes your reputation more than any single achievement or setback. Have you ever experienced an unexpected professional setback that ultimately led to positive change? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. Sometimes our most painful moments become turning points that lead us to better opportunities than we could have imagined. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement during a career transition. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember that sometimes being pushed out is exactly what you need to find your way forward.